Well, welcome everybody to our virtual show, the Gauge Guild's virtual show of 2022. And this afternoon's session is a questions and answers session from Peter Reynolds and Ian Allen, who are representatives of the amazing SR7 layout somewhere in the south of England. So if you'd like to make a start, chaps, and tell us something about it.
I'll leave it to you, Peter.
Ian, no, you go.
No, you've been a member longer than I have, please.
Well, okay. Well, Jeff is here as well, and Jeff is the secretary of the railway and basically looks after us all and sort of organises us all. But what it is, the railway is in a suburban back garden in the west of London. The garden is 75 feet by 27. And when it was originally built, it was U-shaped and like 2/3 of it was outside. And it was an end-to-end layout, and it had quite nice operating potential, and we built it and ran it like that for a number of years until the weather started getting too bad so that we couldn't take advantage of it. So fast forward to 2015, the planning started in 1990 and we started building it in 1992. Fast forward to 2015, Jeff decided that what we would do is we would have another, in a minute, Ian, have another building, and Ian redesigned all the bits that were outside so that they could fit into this new building. So it now runs between 3 buildings, the garage, the old shed and the new shed. And the bit that was originally outside has been converted into a sort of rundown, beat-up terminus, single-line terminus, and that's what it is. The video is quite self-explanatory. It can be run with 6 people, and it can be run with 22 people. And I don't really know what else to say. Ian, you wanted to say something correctly already.
Perhaps at this stage, it might be a good idea to tell anybody that's not aware that on a different part of the virtual show, there is actually a presentation, isn't there, and a video.
Yeah, there is a 35-minute video.
Which is certainly, if you've not seen it already, I'd certainly recommend going and looking at it, because, you know, I've been there. I've been and watched the video myself, you know, and it's certainly well worth watching. So I'd recommend that.
Just before we answer the question that Tony's posed on the chat, just to correct, sorry, Peter, just to correct you, going back to 2011 when Jeff first proposed, or the proposal was made to the group about doing a rebuild and you know, looking at developing the railway so we could run it more regularly, so we weren't affected by weather. We started to dismantle Coulston as it was outside in 2012. The new shed, which is 36'9" by 13'4", was erected in 2012. We started laying track on the 1st of January 2013. New build. Members in the group, can't remember if it's 16 or 17, to be honest.
Jeff?
Yeah, sadly we lost somebody recently, so we're down to 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 members.
We run to a sequence, Tony. So Andrew Smith, who's not with us on this session, unfortunately, he's probably doing something that he enjoys doing more than this. He spends time during the week working on a new sequence that we're on. It's referred to as a timetable, but it's basically a sequence. So he'll go round at the end of the previous running session, or the section that's just stopped, and he'll note where items of stock are and locomotives are, and then he'll start to build a new sequence for the following running session. You know, so if we have a week apart of running, he'll spend time during the week to generate a new running session for us. Hello, Mr. Cook. Good to see you, sir.
So does he, I mean, I've got a mate who's done this with his layout with the Bala Junction, which is quite complex, and to try and work out a sequence is based on a working timetable. And so what he did originally, eventually, was to draw out a plan of the layout and actually have bits of paper for each train, so you could work out where it was in the sequence.
Yeah, Andrew's got a big A2 piece of foam board with a plan taped to it, and he moves you can get those big pins that you can sort of like write on. He has a series of those pins, and he moves them around.
Pins.
Sorry?
Map
Mapping
pins.
pins.
Pins, yeah, and he moves them around this diagram, which is based on the sort of like block diagram rather than the particular layout that Ian drew. So it's based on the other drawing, and he moves them around and he works it out from that. But there is an additional video that I've just posted, which shows us running the timetable. And for Toulston A, which is my background, you can just see the top of the phone above my shoulder here. That's the telephone where the operator sits. For a reasonable typical operating session, the person who sits there will have 4 pages of A4, quite closely typed. It's a pity because he collects them all at the end of the session, so I haven't actually got one that I can hold up and show you. But whoever's sitting there and at Coulston C gets about 4 pages worth of A4.
So you have to run it to the sequence, and does it work like proper signaling where each controller controls a section of the layout?
Yes, yeah, it is. Whoever sits here, Coulston A, really dictates what everyone else is doing, and it's DC, so it's arranged so that you drive to a certain point, and when the signals change, then the other person takes over. So Great Victoria Street drives towards Coulston A. Coulston A takes over for about a 25-foot run, then it's taken over by Coulston C, and they drive it round to the approach to Bexhill, and then Bexhill drives it from just where the line enters Shed again into the station, and it's the opposite way round. Plus there are other branch lines and goods yards and various other things that sort of append onto the main route. So we can open, depending on how many people we've got and what the weather's like, we can open or close things as required. So like the bit that's still outside, if the weather's really bad, there's no need to open it, because you can, the freight services get diverted somewhere else, but the passenger services that normally run up there are only short push-pull services, and they will fit between Coulston C and the toilet that you can see in the video, and they can be stabled there until Coulston C is ready to bring them back. So it doesn't take an awful lot of modification for the sequence for us to be able to run things if the weather turns bad, basically.
Right, that's quite interesting. What about the see, I can see the layout looks very, very southern. Is it based on any particular kind of region of the Southern Railway?
It is based on the central and eastern sections of the southern. So it's sort of like the Victoria, Blackfriars sort of corridor down towards Red Hill, and then not to Brighton, but then back along sort of down towards Tunbridge.
Is
bit
that
all
London,
it's-
Brighton and South Coast Railway?
Yeah,
for
it's not the LBSC bit. It's where the South Eastern Railway branches off at Red Hill, really.
Right. That's quite interesting. And all the stock that you run is kind of based on stuff that would have been running in that area. I have to say, I always have a soft spot for, kind of EMUs. I do like to see sort of modernish EMU stuff, because I can see over your shoulder that you've got the third rail, haven't you, on big chunks of it as well.
There is third rail on quite big chunks of it now, and we've got quite a large amount of electric and EMU stock.
Is a lot of that scratch built or converted from coaches, or can you buy kits for them?
Ian's the best person to speak to.
Some of the older stock we have, so the 4 sub, which is based on the bully design, the 2 bills and the 2 null, I believe, are all ex-Westdale kits.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, the current 2 EPB, that is the recent addition to the fleet, the 4 EPB, the 2 2H sets that we have, they're from Peter Clark kits.
Peter Clark.
Is the MLV a Westdale as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, the MLV is a Westdale.
Yeah, the Westdale. And I've currently got upstairs a 2 HAP unit from Peter Clark kits, which is for meter finish for Peter Reynolds.
Right.
So we'll have that to add to the fleet as well. And I've also got the 6S DEMU set for Jeff to build. So that's basically the a 6-coach version of the 2H, 3H thumper sets.
Thumper,
I
was going to mention.
Yeah, the S refers to it being short coaches, because there was the 6S and the 6Ls and the 6B with the buffet.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
the two null is actually a Roxy kit.
Roxy, yeah.
Right,
Roxy.
okay. And what? And the whole thing runs on straight DC, does it, and not digital?
It's straight DC.
Yeah.
We've also got 3 electric locomotives. You know the Hornbys?
Well, only one at present.
One of 3, yeah.
You're still waiting for the other 2.
Bradley models.
I noticed in the video that there's one that's got a pantograph on it, isn't there?
Yeah,
that's it. That's the Hornby. Yeah, 2003. Yeah.
What can I? Excuse my ignorance. I'm sure you all are going to tell me immediately. But why do Southern Region locos have pans?
Right, I'll tell you that if I may.
Carry on, Jeff.
They didn't like to use the third rail when they were shunting in yards like Hither Green and places like that. So they put up rudimentary tramway style overhead, 600 volts, and they could raise the pantograph by compressed air so that they could shunt in these yards, and the shunting staff were then nowhere near any third rail.
Of course, yeah. So it's a safety thing, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a safety thing.
I think the North Eastern and the Lancashire Yorkshire, the Lancashire Yorkshire certainly did the same thing with the 242 tank that was converted to a electric loco, obviously with a different body. But I think the North Eastern did the same as well, didn't they, Peter? They had overhead in the yards.
Did the same. They had it was the Newcastle Quayside branch, but that was done for that was electrified for a completely different reason, because the tunnel was horseshoe shaped and on 1 in 27 gradient, and both tunnel portals faced west, where most of the wind comes from in this country. So when it first opened, it was steam operated, but on windy days, the wind blew in both ends of the tunnel from the same direction, and the smoke didn't go. So they converted it to electric, but it was third rail in the tunnel. And then overheads in the yard.
Yeah, it's a bit of a peculiarity, isn't it, in the north? Because we there aren't really any third rail systems in the north. I mean, the one that springs to mind is the old thingy service from Manchester Victoria to Bury was third rail, wasn't it?
1200 volts DC side contact, dating from 1916.
I'm honestly not sure, apart from the one in Newcastle, of anything else.
Liverpool to Southport was third rail.
There's Liverpool Underground as well,
and Liverpool Underground,
And Newcastle.
Yeah, and Birkenhead had a
Tyneside had a third rail
Yeah,
system
the-
until about
the
1962.
third rail one in Tyneside.
Yeah.
It's the same. But the strange thing is that all the motivation for the third rail, it was all identical motivation for fitting the third rail, in that it was done to compete with trams.
Right.
Yeah.
And certainly the Southern was done to compete with the tram system, which was quite well developed in the southeastern part of London. In fact, they still use the tram shed down the road from where I work, New Cross Gate. The tram shed is still used as a bus station.
Right.
Very interestingly, it's set back from the road. And there was a triangular junction in New Cross Gate Road, and this great big, like 200-yard long tram track that ran up to the tram shed, but it's still used as a bus garage now.
Right. That's interesting. It's interesting that I suppose there's that crossover period, isn't there? You know, where you got tracklesses and trams and buses, but I presume the third rail's is it just a very cheap way of electrifying railways? You know, rather than having all the catenary infrastructure that you need.
Well, if I can interrupt, the very first electrification in South London was the London, Brighton and South Coast between London Bridge and Victoria. And that was a sort of Siemens system put in about 1500 volts DC at the turn of the century to, again, compete with the trams and motor buses. And that used overhead. And eventually they extended that system down to Colston and would have run it all the way to Brighton. But the South Western Railway introduced their third rail cheapo 650 volt DC system in the beginning of the First World War. And when the Southern was formed in 1923, basically there was more third rail than there was overhead. So they decided to do the whole system overhead.
Yeah.
In fact, the Chatham had decided they were going to put in 4 rail. So you can imagine if they hadn't have all become the Southern, you'd have had 3 different systems, including one high-speed route from London to Brighton. But yeah, they all went back to the third rail. And that's what we've tried to do, put in the infrastructure for the third rail, and, you know, do all the correct trunking. And there's still lots to do, but all the paraphernalia that used to go with the electric. And you can see in the background there, we've got the correct M3 point machines produced by Westinghouse. And we're going to, when we do this rebuild this year, shortly, we shall have the correct Westinghouse colour light signals with the pig's ears on them, replacing semaphores. So yeah, we're going down that road.
You're going to take all these glorious semaphore signals down, are you? Like the ones?
No, not there. These will be just a few signals at our London terminus, Great Victoria Street.
Right. Okay.
But somebody's pointed out to me, if you're going to rebuild the station throat and modernise all the track layout, you would have put in colour light signalling. But when we say colour light signalling, we've gone for the 1932, 1955 Brighton style, the ones with the pig's ears where the motorman could draw up close to the signal and still receive an aspect, you know, and indicator boxes and things like that.
I have to say I don't understand enough about signalling to be able to comment on that. Although,
well, I used to be a signalman like Peter, so we've got a rough line on it all. We're not perfect, but
I mean, you've got 3 colour light signalling systems to choose from. You've got the Railway Signalling Company one, which is very similar to Manchester Victoria, where the signal heads are circular and the signal aspects are arranged across. Or you've got the Siemens 1926, 1929 system, where you have multiple heads for junctions. But the Brighton one is a relatively simple compromise from my point of view, because I've got to get it all working, in that I don't need to consider multiple 3 and 4 aspect heads for a particular route at a particular location. So it's not going to be too onerous to do.
Right. Can I perhaps just say at this point, welcome to all those people that have joined us in the sort of 20 minutes or so that we've been going. And if you want to ask either of these two guys a question, I think we've got about 15 people participating. So I think it's probably appropriate that you just unmute yourself and ask a question. Or if you prefer, type it in the chat box below, and myself and Tony that are hosting the meeting will back the questions on for you. But
I don't know whether you can see it clearly enough, but there's the LBSC train.
Yeah, with the overhead. Yeah.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
They used multiple units, or they used an electric locomotive which looked like a carriage. It was a bogie vehicle, and they inserted that in the train. So you'd have one of them in the middle and two coaches either side. When they eventually got rid of the system, they turned these so-called locomotives into luggage vans, or milk vans. Yeah,
They call them milk vans.
Yeah, you could still see them knocking about in the 50s, but they'd had all the electrical equipment taken out of them.
But they were also rebuilt. Quite a few of them were rebuilt as bogie brake vans, but they're slightly different to the Queen Mary ones, because what they've got is, in the bodywork in the middle, they've got a tumble home at the bottom, whereas the Queen Mary ones, Queen Mary ones are flat-sided. But the ones that were converted from these locomotives have got a tumble home at the bottom, and they've got smooth sides, not planked. It is a tumble home.
Tumble homes are from waist above because it's a naval design. It's a turn under from waist down.
Right,
it's a typical railway journalist years ago had said it was a tumble home, yeah, but not. Anyway, I'm just going to share screen, just going back to the signals. This is going to be a first. So this is the design that Jeff has alluded to. This is based on the 1955 Westinghouse colour light signal with pig's ears. This is the CAD design I worked on the last few weeks. Peter has done a couple of test prints, of which I've actually done some modifications since, off the back of the test prints. And Mike Hopkins of Scale Factor has had a look at them in terms of us seeing if we can have them cast in brass going forward.
Wow, that's impressive, that.
So if I get rid of the rear panel, so this is what it looks like internally. So there'll be 3 separate LEDs mounted internally. Peter has found online a source for the lenses for the main aspects, and we've still got to figure out what we're going to do for the pig's ears.
What are the pig's ears?
They're basically just a smaller illuminated, illumination. It's just a smaller bulb. So that, as Jeff said, a motorman can drive up close to the signals and he can look out his cab window and see whether he's got green, amber, or red, or green, yellow, red. Yeah, it's just another way of being able to see what the aspect is.
Like a repeater sort of thing.
Basically, yeah. But
yeah, I mean, it's a common thing with London Underground. London Underground signalling has where they've still got colour lights in the open air. They've still got pig's ears. But it's not a common thing on the normal railway network. I mean, none of our external signals have got pig's ears, and what happens is that the drivers stop. They will stop their cabs level with where the signal post telephone is. So, which is normally sort of like 2/3 of the carriage back from the signal anyway, so that they can see them perfectly anyway.
Alex has just put a comment on the chat. It will be a perfect fit for the tiny light bulb on the signal lights. Well, yeah, that's the thing, Alex. We haven't yet figured out properly how we're going to do the bulbs as they are in the pig's ears. Yeah, the main aspects are fine. It's just the small ones.
I can't get LEDs smaller.
Scratching our head.
Well, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I think it's in my head that I learned on circuits and things when I was in primary school. I learned about it and be very careful on the wires and the batteries and lights, for example. So it's quite a bit of a circuit for the model railway layout. a big one like this one you have developed?
Yeah,
We
well,
might be able to use fibre optics, possibly. I don't know.
No.
They
No.
can't use spike because they can't be bent. They'd have to
Ah,
be bent
right.
more.
So
Um,
not-
Depends
so
on
not-
degrees.
Tony's asking what mechanism you use for the semaphores.
the semaphores are servo operated. Well, the ones behind me in the picture, these are servo operated. Some of the ones in the old shed are mechanically operated, using fishing wire and fishing weights and pulleys. But the ones in the picture behind me, they're operated by servos, and I make and design my own servo drivers for these. They use pickaxe microcontrollers, and they're all interlocked with the points and everything. This signal gantry that you can see behind me, this is signals 9, 10, and 11 at Coulsdon A, and you can't actually hold a train at this signal, but so it means that you have to operate whatever route you're going to operate from this signal first. So it all has to be set up with the points, and then the highest signal, the one above my shoulder, that's signal number 9, Coulsdon A9. That has to be pulled off first before you pull any of the approach signals. So that's there are four other signals that approach that, but those do isolate track sections. So you have to pull that one off before you release, because you can't hold a train there. And then what it will do is, if the train is to go into platform 4, it will just go off. But if the route is set into platform 3, the little route indicator below, which is a surface mount 7-segment display, that will show a number 3. The calling on arm below it works as a calling on arm, and it's train operated. So it works the same way. You have to pull lever number 11 at that point. Set your route, pull lever number 11. When you pull lever number 11, nothing happens, but you can allow a train to approach the signal. And then there's an infrared detector below that signal. If you drive the train at the correct speed, when it hits that infrared detector, that signal will come off, and then there will be a 3 or a 4 in the display according to which platform it's going to go in. So, I mean, it's all about creating an illusion and an appearance of actually how it's supposed to look, but without sort of going too madly overboard. Everything is electronically interlocked rather than mechanically interlocked. And it's all about sort of giving a decent experience to the operator and to the viewer. So you have to, if you're operating as a signalman, you have to operate stuff in the correct sequence. So this is in fact your advanced home. The ones that do the isolation are your outer homes, and you have to pull everything in the correct sequence to get it to work, and indeed to even get a train to move. You can turn the controller as much as you like, but if you don't do the signaling in the correct order, nothing will happen.
So is it your interlocking, is it electronic or mechanical?
The interlocking is electronic.
So if I can just add on to what Peter's saying. So when you're operating the railway with the timetable, round to the left where Peter is the station. A diesel train will come in the outer end of one of the platforms. Well, the platform, say 3, which is the normal platform. That's come from one of 2 locations. And then you bring an electric train in to the same platform, but the signal is approach controlled, as Peter says. The calling on arm will go off, the platform number will come on, and the electric train then glides into the same platform as the already stationary diesel engine train. There's an interchange of passengers in our minds, and then the trains depart in opposite directions from the same platform. The connection's made, and then the timetable, the sequence timetable moves on to something else. So all these signaling things that we've designed, or Peter's designed, and Ian and I have planned, are such that they fit in with the sequence timetable and the pattern of services. That's why when we gave this little talk some while ago about signaling, we said you really need to design your train service first. So when you know what train service you're going to operate, then you can design your track layout and your signaling, so that the whole thing works together as one unit, and you know, you don't get any big mistakes.
So it's not just like playing with section. I mean, I don't mean this in a facetious way. It's because it's a bit of a mystery to me, really, about designing the layout. You don't do that thing where you just sit there with bits of Hornby track and make up a pretty track plan. It's really about approaching it from a, you know, the in the sense that you've just said, where you think about where the trains are going to go to and from, and design it around that.
We were fortunate. We were fortunate that basically with the new build that we called Plan Y, where we erected the new shed and put quite a lot of the railway, i.e. Bexhill original terminus, indoors as well. We were fortunate that because we already knew how that operated and worked, it wasn't so much a complete new design. It was just a redevelopment of the existing design, trying to get the core into the pint pot, which we managed to achieve, although it is a bit restricted on space, in actual physical space we have in the shed. But it's like I say, it's not a case of just sitting down with, you know, Pico set track or Pico flex track. It was, you know, as you probably appreciate yourself with the work you do, Nick, and Tony as well. It was hours and hours and hours and hours using Templot. You know, it took me quite a long time on Templot to get everything right, especially the Bexhill station, because we'd gone from an area that's 27 feet long outdoors, and we had to squeeze that into a shorter length. But at the same time, what we've managed to do is I've managed to make the platforms longer than they originally were, and that's just by, you know, the power of Templot and being able to work through it. But it is a long, convoluted process, and as you say, if you're not familiar with designing a railway or building a railway, it can seem quite daunting, and I think a lot of people have that, especially when it comes to, you know, building track, as I've mentioned in the SIGs on track, and also in my evening with sessions. But until you dip your toe in the water, you're always going to be a little bit afraid of it. But we've embraced it. You know, as a group, we embrace the technology and embrace the opportunity to improve our enjoyment of running a complex railway system.
And Templot's quite a useful tool. When you think you can fit something into a space, you draw a bit out, fag packet or a back of something, and think, oh, I can do this layout plan. They say, right, let's put it to Templot, and Templot will quite quickly tell, oh no, you can't do that. You won't be able to fit that in because this will be too tight, or that's too short.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
I mean, we had Jeff and I had quite a few discussions about how we were going to change a few things around, and one thing I wanted to introduce, which we'd never had before, was the ability to be able to run trains continually in a loop. And we've managed to incorporate that into the design, which is not used in the sequence. It's not used when we're having running sessions, but it's there so that if we just want to run something round, we can, which means you can kind of operate the railway with one person.
Yeah,
you know,
you can run two trains.
You know, if on a whim, if Jeff, you know, is at home one day when we don't have meetings, he can lower the bridge section and set the points at Coulston C end for the loop lines via the NX panel, go around to Coulston A and drive a couple of trains round quite happily, and just sit there and run trains round.
And it's great for testing as well. Brilliant.
And because we've got the gradients, we've got multiple gradients of varying degrees on the railway. It is a good test for locomotives, and stock as well, because obviously the gradients, the undulations soon sort them out from the boys when it comes to, you know, stock running well.
Gradients are always a good test of any new model.
They are. Yeah, yeah. Just going to your question that you posted there, Tony, about portability.
Well, that was Nick. Yeah, I was just about to ask.
Yeah,
that.
well, there was a plan many years ago, and this was, if you've seen the video and you've seen Smithfield, the original plan was Smithfield was going to be a layout we could take out to exhibitions. It was designed so it could be segmented. So I think it's I think it's 4 or 5 baseboards in total.
Yeah, it's 4. It's 4.
4 we can unbolt. And the plan was we could build a short fiddle yard, or fiddle yard off one end, and take it out as a terminus station for an exhibition. Unfortunately, it never happened. One of those quirks of fate, that it seemed that it was a good idea at the time, but then it was, well, who's going to want to take it out to an exhibition? And then with the complexity of the wiring systems that we've got in terms of interlocking of signalling and some of the points and track work, it became unviable. Interestingly, though, I went on to design an extension, which Peter and I dubbed Creed Street, which was based on a low-level goods yard. And I've actually still got all the plans upstairs on A3 that I printed out about 20 odd years ago. It never came to fruition. Creed Street, it's got to be post 1999, because that's when I first started using Templot.
Yeah.
So it's got to be 20 odd years ago. But so there was a plan originally for part of it, Tony, but unfortunately not. No. A friend of mine said the other day when I was talking to him about the railway, said, "Oh, does it go out to exhibitions?" I said, "Well, you'd need an awfully big crane, awfully big crane to lift it all out of the garden in one piece."
If
Can
I
I
could,
ask about your turnouts? Obviously all handmade, your turnouts, but obviously did to a Templot design.
Yeah.
What sleepers did you use for those? Components, I guess.
For everything that I've done so far has been basically the standard C&L sleepers. Although some of the longer timbers have had to be 3mm ply.
Yeah.
Because they're, you get some points and crossings where you get to a really long timber, which is prototypical. So you would go up a size from a 12-inch standard timber for a point and a crossing. They moved up to a 14-inch wide timber, which was anything of 18 feet. Then that started to go to a wider and longer single timber. So there are a few, certainly on Bexhill where the station's road is. There are certainly quite a few ply timbers there. And the new build for Great Victoria Street will also have ply timbers involved with that as well, because there's some complex formation where it's just easier to run one timber across than use short timbers and try and then interlock them all.
Have you found and I found certainly with some of the plastic C&L timbers, certainly for turnouts, and I'm not alone in this experience, that we've had problems with slight changes of gauge. And, we always consider that plastic's quite stable. But in actual fact, I was talking to a plastics expert and said, well, no, it's nowhere near as stable as you think. I've had problems with gauge narrowing on turnouts that are all plastic timbered to a degree. So that's why I went to ply, completely ply for everything.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I'm there Tuesday actually, so I'll take a couple of gauges down and have a check of stuff. But we have had a few issues recently where we've had stock derailing going through the Bexhill formation. But we can, in the main, tie down that to specific items of stock. However, it was pointed out to me the other day that we kept having an issue at one particular set of switchblades on one point. And having had a look at it, it is slightly wide across the gap, the back to back on the point blades, because I had to do a repair job because one of them actually come adrift, and it's on a fairly tight radius where you're coming off one point, a slight bit of straight track, and then another point on the curve. And what I've found is on certain wheel sets where the point blade is, the flange was actually riding up onto the tip of the blade and causing the vehicles to go the wrong side. So I'll be looking at that on Tuesday as to elicit a repair or a modification just to help everything go through smoothly. But we haven't had any real problems that I can tell from lack of gauge tightening as it would be, Tony.
Yeah.
But I mean, for myself, for anything I'm going to build for myself, I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be going for ply or walnut is another nice item if you can get walnut sleepers.
Yeah. What point motors do you use?
Tortoise.
Yeah,
We've had 2 failures in 22 years, 23 years, and one of those was due to a faulty manufacturing unit.
Yeah, manufacturing fault.
Yeah.
So effectively, we've only had one that has failed in service. Really, that's due to wear and tear. It just burnt out.
We've got 110 point ends.
Yeah, we've used tortoises on Hayside and on Bala Junction, and apart from misuse, they're very, very reliable.
Very good.
Yeah, very reliable.
Can I just going back to design aspects of the railway? When I first started designing it in 1990, took me a couple of years to design it. I was inspired by some of the guild layouts of the past, like Crewchester and John Hart's Middle and Southern Counties Railway. I always, whatever you think about, clockwork or core scale, I always think that they were really excellent operational layouts, and I had hoped that one day we could build a layout that, based on them, that inspired us to be an operational railway. And I had the help of a few people, people like Jeff Saville, who is a guild president, and Dave Hale and others who helped me in the initial plans. And then when I left the railways and my second career, my fag packet drawings were given to Ian, and it was him that, using Templot, a wonderful tool, and endless hours of meetings and telephone conversations, he got into practice the plans that I'd always had all those years ago to expand the railway, but at the time didn't have the money or the wherewithal. So we are where we are today because of people who've been in the guild, who've inspired us to build an operational model railway, so that you can sit 22 people down and play with 110 point ends and 109 signals to your heart's content, and everybody can have a lot of fun. In fact, the more people who turn up to operate the railway, the more fun it becomes. And of course, the sequence time,
a lot of those early layouts that were clockwork and otherwise, they concentrated on operation. That was their sort of focus in many ways. That's an inspiration to us now. You might regard those older layouts as quite crude, perhaps for their day, but time has moved on. But they've inspired us, and to build our layouts and incorporate operation into how they work, and they make it far more interesting if you've got a proper it runs as a railway rather than trains going round and round. You run it as a sequence,
and that's what our railway is all about. It is all about the operational bit of it, and as Jeff said, I mean, that position behind me, that 6 controllers there, plus a telephone, plus a 40 lever frame. Down the far end, Coulson C, you've got 5 controllers, a 25 lever frame, a sets of panel for the coal concentration depot, and an NX panel, which is older than I am. Which is a genuine. Yeah, it's a genuine NX panel. It's from made from components from Slough and Reading, and that operates the junction at Coulson C, and that adds to the interest and the fun of it. No two places on the railway, and there are 8 operating positions. None of them are the same. They've all got their own little quirks, and they've all got their own little things that you need to know, and the way that they work, and it can be a bit daunting for people to come in and see it the first time. But once you get into the swing of it with someone who knows how things work and everything, it can be extremely enjoyable. Even for us who've done it for years, it can be very enjoyable.
I've mentioned
this is the whole. Sorry, Tony, you go.
Yeah, I've mentioned Bala Junction a few times, and it's probably out the circles because there's a 4mm layout, but that operates as a network with 3 or 4 different stations, and it takes about 10 operators with a controller, signalman, and various drivers. And again, that runs to a sequence. And when you get to a point in the day where you want to go and have your tea, you stop. Next time you go, you just restart the sequence. What's the next train? And off you go. Just
Excellent.
Operational railway. It's
the point is that. So the point is, though, that all of you in this team either know from professional experience how the railway works, are interested in how the railway works, or want to know how the railway works. There are so many layouts that you see on the exhibition circuit where the people who built them haven't the faintest idea how the railway works and are not interested in finding out either.
Yes.
The number of times we go to exhibitions, and as soon as the first train moves, Pat and I walk away because it's obvious that they haven't the faintest idea what they're doing.
Yeah, you wonder if some people have never actually gone to watch, observed railway work.
That's right. Yeah.
Have you never watched a real train sequence?
But then there are not many of us now in sort of my sort of ancient age group that remember the railway as it was.
If I can just say, the difference between a train set and a model railway is how you operate it.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly. Yes, exactly.
There are many people out there who want to build a layout and then throw it away, or want to build engines and aren't interested in operating this. I mean, it's a broad church, railways and all the rest of it. But if I say to you that I spent 40 odd years studying railways, even though I was in the police at the time, when I became a railwayman, I learned even more. And I decided that this was, believe it or not, the first layout I ever built. And I'd learned from the experience of studying railway operation that this is what I wanted to do, based on, what I was discussing earlier about being inspired by Cruchester and all the rest of it. And it's these guys here and others like them, members of the SR7mm Group, who've brought that imagination, that reality to life, and has produced a layout that we can all sit down and enjoy, hopefully for years and years to come. But yeah, if operation is the thing you want to do, then I thoroughly recommend getting together, a bit like Tony there, a group of friends, and building a layout that you can all operate, and the enjoyment is unbelievable, I can tell you.
As another example to that, sorry, Tony, we had obviously we had visitors from overseas the weekend after Guildex, and Phil Harding came and sat with me at Coulston A, and he picked it up straight away. He picked up the operation straight away. He looked after driving trains. I looked after the signalling, and he wasn't daunted by having 4 controllers in front of him. And our last running session, which was last weekend, wasn't it? We had Stan Dixon's son, visitors again, and he came and sat with me again at Coulston A, and the same thing. He had 4 controllers, and I just told him, which controller, and he picked it up really quickly, and really nice driving as well. It wasn't a case of, because that's the other thing I don't know if you've noticed, Michael, or all the other guys here. Some layouts, trains are just running at non-prototypical speeds.
Yes.
I mean, the G1 MRA video that I put up on the Guild forum, on the Guild YouTube channel, which I went to at Bicester a few weeks ago. There was a freight train running there in gauge 1 that was running as fast as an express passenger train. It was a London North Western unfitted, and it was just rattling past. But yeah, and because that's the other thing. I think that's where you get the enjoyment, is seeing trains run as prototypical as you can make them, and that's what we enjoy as well. And not having something run too fast, and have the unfitted freights running slower than fitted freights. But then we also have times where some of the operators occasionally will run a freight train across a junction, and they've accepted an express passenger on the main line. And they'll say, you would not actually do that movement. So there's still a lot for people to learn, because it's like Peter said earlier on, it's the idiosyncrasies of particular locations that you're operating at, that you need to look at your sequence and think, well, this freight train is coming from location X and going to location Y, and it's running late, but there's an express due. You wouldn't actually run the freight.
I think
The other one the other week was they ran the sequence as it was set for a stopping service to run just before the express.
Yeah.
Well, no, you'd change those rounds, so that was noted for the next year that they do these things, and
that would depend though whether the stopping train was actually a feeder to the express.
Well, because it's only the one main line, you wouldn't have the stopper in front of the express, would you?
Well,
What it would
quite some
do,
time in front, so as it could
If timing wise, yes, but this wasn't, because it was the way the sequence was. Because I've found, and this is where I would sometimes run to a proper timetable, albeit speeded up one, is that with a sequence, sometimes you sat there thinking, right, just waiting for them to do something, and I'm just waiting for them to do something. You sit there for 5 minutes and nothing happens. Whereby if you're running it 2 o'clock, then it has to run to the clock.
this is This is bizarre, isn't it? It's the otherworldliness of model railways. This that I've got no experience of, because I'm quite happy to sit there, and work out where every stopcock and every reach rod on a locomotive goes. But I've absolutely no idea at all about what you guys are describing. It's
Can I ask?
It's a broad church, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. Yes, it is.
Can I ask our audience if anyone's got any questions? We've got about 8 minutes to go, according to my clock. If you want to type it in on the chat, if you've got any further questions.
Or maybe just unmute yourselves and chat. Ask anyway.
Can I just say greetings from Canada to start with?
Hi, Peter. Good to see you again.
How much I really enjoyed the video of your railway. It was absolutely breathtaking, I thought, in all aspects, including the colour aspects. But my breakfast is ready. It's already gone cold, so I'm going to have to love you and leave you. But once again, I think the Gaujo Guild have come up trumps with their whole thing this today. I've been enjoying myself since I got up, and but if I hear your breakfast is going cold once more,
you need to go.
Right, you'll be in trouble.
Frying pan around the ear roll.
Peter, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again,
I would
buddy.
have missed it, Ian. It's fantastic. Yeah.
By
the way,
you have a global reach.
Am I the only married man whose conversations with his wife begin with, "Are you even listening to me?"
No.
Yes.
I don't have one of those. Alex,
She's telling me my breakfast is going cold.
Alex doesn't either. No.
Thanks very much, guys.
Take care, Peter.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
cheers now.
Where's my tea?
Anyway, I have one who goes to exhibitions with me and looks at them and says, "They don't use the signals on this layout, do they?" In a sort of stage whisper that's heard all over the hall. So I said, "It's all right for you if I said something, I get punched on the nose."
Well, what is interesting, Michael, is if you look at Chris Thomas's layout in the show, Bridgewater, Cannington, and Lil, can't remember the last bit. His wife has done all the scenery.
Yes,
she's done all the backgrounds and stuff.
All the scenery.
Yeah. So there are those, and perfect example of those that get involved. John and Jackie Neeshaw.
Yes.
Perfect example of a great couple. Doing a lot of work for the guild, and Jackie's got engrossed in her role within the guild, and also their local club St. Neots, where she's one of the driving forces on their new layout that will be hopefully
my wife's handiwork.
So I think it's great that guys their partners are getting involved and enjoying the hobby as well, and the social aspect. Because we wouldn't all know each other if it wasn't for not just the guild, but the fact that we're able to do these virtual shows. That Peter, Jeff, and I can share our experience of our layout or our railway with a wider audience.
Before we do run out of time, can I ask one technical about the railway? You say it's DC, which I can understand, and I can understand the reasoning for it. But how do you actually achieve a smooth handover,
Peter?
Well, the way that it works is that you generally drive away from where you are.
Yes.
So Great Victoria Street.
Oh, away from where you are.
You drive away from where you are.
Now, there's a caveat there, though, isn't there, Peter? Because you drive to yourself at the termini. So
yeah, the termini are slightly different. But when you leave Great Victoria Street, you drive towards Causden A.
Yes.
And then the section where there's a signal gantry outside the shed where your train pulls up.
Yeah.
If the route is not set.
Yeah.
And then when the signal is changed, that changes the controller over. So if you've got a train standing at a signal, which is an isolating point on the railway, changing the signal over doesn't only isolate the train, it changes over who has control of the train. So, and that applies all the way around the railway. So when you're driving from Bexhill, you drive from Bexhill to the approach to Causden C. There's a gantry out there. When you set the route on the NX, that changes the controller over.
But that assumes but the two controllers still have to be matched in some way to avoid a jerky handover. More derailments happen as a result of jerky handovers than
the jerky handovers for us normally occasionally elicit the train becoming detached from the locomotive. But we have long-term a plan to introduce balance meters using LEDs.
Right. Yes.
That's a long-term plan. Normally, I mean, for a fast train, certainly within the new build in the shed plan that was plan Y with the new build, I know that if the operator at Causden C has got his controller set to 11 o'clock and I've got mine set to 11 o'clock, we have a fairly smooth handover. But a lot of it at the moment, Michael, is guesswork. Sometimes we have some really nice takeovers. Other times we don't. But like I said, long term, the plan is to have balance meters, so you can see, you can rotate your controller until you get the green LED in the middle of the three illuminated. Much like, if you're familiar with digital cameras or autofocus cameras, you'll see the little arrows and circle in the bottom of your viewfinder or whatever they use, and it's basically if you go one way, you get the arrow to point to the middle, away to the middle, and then when it's in the middle, it's in focus. It's the same with the balance meters. There'll be two red triangular LEDs pointing inwards to a green circular LED, and you just turn it the right way till you get the green illuminated, and then that matches the one before.
Matches voltage.
Yeah. Because the reason I asked is because one railway up in the northwest that I operated on from time to time many years ago was basically 20 volts. Right. But occasionally some visitors would come along with 12-volt engines. So obviously the controller had to be set lower down.
Yes.
And it was sheer guesswork. If you suddenly got a phone call from this is a 12-volt engine, you think, well, how the hell do I set the controller? And that was always a problem. And that was why I was asking, because with a layout like yours, you obviously have to have some logical way of handing over without trying to spread a train all over the track.
Yeah.
As Ian says, probably the best way that it's done at the moment is the optimum position of the controller knob, because they're all unregulated, but they are all basically the same. So it's 11 o'clock or 11:30 is really the optimum position of the pointer on it. Like I said, all the controllers are unregulated, so the open circuit voltage on the track is between 19 and 20 volts, but as soon as you put a load on it, that goes down to about 14. At maximum thing. So at 11 o'clock, you're getting about 9 volts or so to the track if you've got a loco on it. And we can run double headers and everything. The controllers that I made are virtually bomb-proof. They're capable of, if I changed the circuit breakers on them, they can do 25 amps if I could supply them with 25 amp supply. And we haven't had a controller touch with a new controller go in the years that we've been using. I've made a few slight modifications to them to make them more controllable, but people, like you said, it's a question of getting used to them.
Yes, yeah.
Just very quickly before we finish, because I know we're just past 2:30. There is one of the videos on YouTube that Peter put together. I think it was part of your evening with session, where the signals that Peter was describing earlier on, 9, 10, 11, which are currently behind him, appear. What I'll do is I'll, because I've got the original clips, I'll put the clip together as a little edited package, and I'll put that on our YouTube channel later, so you can actually see those signals operating and how Peter was describing the operation.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, kind of time's up. I'm sure if anybody's got a quick last question, though, we could just
Because squeeze anything in.
So if anybody
Thank
got
you,
a
mate.
question,
Yeah.
that'll be a no. Well, thanks very much, guys, then for coming along. And
Thank you.
Thank you
all
all.
online, and thanks for answering our sometimes stupid questions, in my opinion.
That's all right. It's a railway modelling is a broad church, as Jeff said.
It is a proper broad church because it's an aspect of the hobby that I have absolutely no idea about at all. And
well, come and visit us, Nick, and we'll fill in that little bit. We'll fill in a little bit of the railway mystery that is missing.
Yes, I'd really like to do that. Thank you very much. Right, well, if that's, I think that's probably it. Then we better call it a wrap, hadn't we? And
well, Nick, sorry, just very quickly. I know Jeff's obviously just invitations out. Anybody that's interested in the signalling aspect, of course, we are probably going to do another visit next year for those people who weren't able to attend our session this year for an overview of the signalling of the railway and get your hands dirty and operate. So if anybody would like to get involved with coming to visit and doing a bit of signalling and learning more about the signalling on the railway,
or just coming to watch it,
watch that video, but also get in touch with Jackie Nishaw, because she's collating the list of people who would like to visit for one of those sessions, and we'll the three of us, myself, Peter, Jeff, will put our heads together and work on a date that'd be suitable for people to come and visit. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. And with that in mind, I think we'll end the session and enjoy the rest of the show.